And in today's video, we're going to talk to you about what not to do for a marathon. So between us, I ran 2 marathons and 6 half marathons.
I've run 5 half marathons, I think 5 10Ks, and who knows how many 5Ks. And I'm training for my first marathon.
Yes. So here's our tips and tricks that we would like to share with you.
Number 1.
Yes, 1.
I feel like Genie. Rule number 1.
Is do not try anything new on race day. Like, don't even attempt it.
No new gear, no new shoes, no new socks, no new underwear, no new hair pieces, nothing.
It's just easier that way. That way you know what to expect on race day, because if you try something new, it's gonna mess you up either potentially mentally or physically.
Nothing new on race day also goes into your clothes, because you don't want it rubbing in places that aren't pleasant to rub in.
So, especially if you're gonna wear a costume as well, get the feel of it before you run in it. That's just my little tip. Because I know some people like to do very elaborate costumes, which are a lot of fun. We ourselves do costumes. We have fun with it. But make sure it's comfortable enough, because 26.2 miles or even 13.1 for a half marathon is a pretty long distance.
So nothing new on race day also goes into your shoes. Typically, from what I've seen, my personal experience with shoes, you want to break them in at least like 50 or 60 miles before they're considered broken in, because then you know they're not going to rub blisters, they're not going to malfunction. You also need to pay attention to the mileage on your shoes, because you don't want to wear shoes that are too run down to run 26.2 miles. On an average running shoe, depending on which one is, you can look on the company website and see pretty much exactly the range of how long your shoes last. From what I've seen, it's usually like 350 miles. So you don't want to run on shoes that are like worn down. And each shoe is different, but usually you can tell by looking at the sole, or if you're having knee pain, it's probably because you have bad shoes.
So tip number 2 is alternate your shoes when you're running. So if you go running one day,
That's a good one.
yeah, thank you. I do this all the time, and especially if you're doing dopey training like me, you're gonna have 4 races in a row. Do not wear all the same shoes for all the races. Please make sure you alternate them, because your shoes are gonna have the wear and tear, and they need to get back to the original form that they are, so that you can have a good race. Okay. Tip number 3 is make sure you have enough time to go to the bathroom. I know that sounds really weird, but trust me, those lines get long and they can make you late to the start line. There's one time I think I waited, what, 20 minutes? I know I must have waited 20 minutes, and it was for a Disney race, and I thought it was gonna be enough time, but
And sometimes the races, like the smaller races, only
Yes.
have 1 porta potty.
Yes, or 2 stalls in the bathroom. I had that experience, and that took about 15 minutes to get through.
Oh, the one that Colby and I did in March only had 3 stalls in the bathroom, and I had a bunch of people there.
Yeah. Make sure that you have enough time to go do everything you need to, because once that race starts, you gotta get going, man.
And you can also check on the race maps and see where the porta potties are along the route. It's a good thing to put in your head.
So for tip 4, it kind of goes with tip number 3. Okay, so with this tip, you want to make sure you do not just get to the start line right before the race starts. You're going to want to have enough time to stretch, to figure out where you're going as well, because I know, especially with the Disney races, sometimes you're like, wait, where's my corral? And then you find out it's 5 minutes away from you. Where am I? Also keep in mind road closures when you're trying to get to the race, so that if it takes longer for you to get there, you save yourself enough time to get to the start line, park. Most races will go ahead and have a website on there for you to be able to check out where parking is, what roads are going to be closed for the race, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, and with Disney races, they have a bus schedule that says the races are gonna, that says the buses are going to start at this time and stop running at this time. So you really know, don't try to get the last bus, because that adds stress, and we're trying to not add stress.
So for my next tip, and this is one that I personally have a hard time with. I know it's weird, and I wish I didn't have a hard time with it, but do not start off too fast. Right off at the start, I just have so much energy built up, and I'm like, all right, let's go. I can do anything. Well, guess what? Try not to match the pace with the person next to you, or think that you're gonna run like super fast all the way through, because remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you're gonna need to save that energy for what you practiced on.
One of the important things, you have a lot of adrenaline on race day that you don't have on a normal training day, just because of the excitement that's in the air and runners and happiness and all that kind of stuff. And whenever you get to the start line, there's a lot of hype, and you're like, oh my gosh.
And they're getting you hyped usually.
Yeah.
The announcers are, and you're like, you're just so ready to do this.
Yeah.
But remember, you practice the pace that you know what it is. Make sure you try and stick to what it is, so that you, one, don't injure yourself, and two,
you have enough fuel for mile number 26.
yes.
It's very easy to get to the start and be like, oh, well, I've got to keep up with everybody in my corral. You don't. You don't.
So here's the next tip.
Here's the next tip. Don't try, and this goes with any training program that you try. If you're following the Galloway plan, or the Hal Higdon plan, or any of the other big ones, they don't have a long run the week before the race, or even 2 weeks before the race. This is what's called a taper, which, is like the best part of marathon training. Let's be real. Couple weeks before the race, one of the things that you're trying to do is you're trying to hold your body back so that you can give that extra push for race day. And you don't want to go all out, one, risk injuring yourself, but it's also a matter of conserving energy and conserving your legs, so that you can make that long distance at the end, whether it be 26.2 miles or 13.1 miles. Typically you don't have to taper with a 10K, but if you want to, go ahead.
So I'm just gonna put this out there. Do not give yourself an unrealistic goal time. And what I mean by this is, so many people have this idea that, oh, I'm gonna be running like for me, I would love to be able to qualify for the Boston Marathon. Oh my gosh, I would love to get a 3 hour and 30-minute marathon. Well, that is unrealistic for me at this very time in date of filming.
And it was also unrealistic your first marathon.
Yes. I knew that after doing a few half marathons, I knew personally what I can do without injuring myself. And what I recommend for you doing is go ahead and run a half marathon, time yourself, and see what kind of time you have. So I recently just did a half marathon with a time of 1 hour and 56 minutes. And so now I know that by the time marathon time comes for me in January for Disney, I can realistically get a sub 4 hour marathon, realistically. Now that's gonna get me closer to wanting to qualify for Boston, but I know that's still an unrealistic goal for me at this very time. So I do my goals based off of what my next marathon or what my next race is. You can judge how realistic your goal is based off of the time that you have from this day to when your race day is. So if you want to make a goal, make sure you make a plan that works with your goal. So make sure you have your tempo runs, you have your easy runs, because your easy runs are gonna help you get to where you need to be for race day.
Coming from someone who's never run a full marathon before, I really have to rely on my training to get me to the finish, because my goal is to finish. It's not a specific time. I have some in my mind of what I would like to be, but yeah, I'm not gonna beat myself up if I don't get it, because personally I'm in Disney World, so I'm gonna enjoy myself and I'm gonna see the characters, and guess what? Seeing the characters adds to your time.
Yes, it does. I've actually calculated this one time. Seeing characters took me about 20 more minutes at least added to my running time.
So I'm more approaching it of, let me have a pace that gets me to the finish in under a 16-minute mile, because that's the pace requirement. But I'm not trying to get a Boston qualifying time, and I won't even get a sub 5-hour time. Like, that's not something that I expect to get, because it's a Disney race.
Yeah.
But as far as judging how fast I will go, you can look at your long runs. And if your long runs for a 13-mile long run or a 15-mile long run, once you get to the more than just 7, like once you get to the double digits,
Yeah.
then you're more able to judge, okay, I can maintain this pace, X pace, for 15 miles, and it's pretty consistent. Double that, you know, have 10 more miles, maybe need to add, I don't know, 30 more seconds to my pace per mile in order to get to this. And then you can go on, I know active.com has a really good pace calculator, and you can put in, okay, I do 1 mile at this point, or 13 miles, my average pace is this, what should my finish time be? The next to last tip that we have, I don't know what number this is. Who knows? And it really goes right along into your paces for the marathon. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get the pace that you think that you're going to for your marathon, or half marathon, or 5K, or 10K, whatever. You just ran a freaking marathon. Like we said in a couple videos ago, which we'll link right here, it doesn't matter if you run a 15-minute mile or a 6-minute mile, you still run a mile.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you run a 3-hour marathon or a 7-hour marathon.
It's still a marathon.
Do you know what percentage of the people of the universe has run a marathon? It's like 0.001% or something like that. And the fact that you finish is like, whenever you're talking to somebody, you can be like, I ran a marathon. They don't need to know how fast or slow you went. You ran a marathon. Nobody's gonna be like, well, were you under 7 hours? Because if you weren't, then it doesn't count. Of course it counts. Yeah. Nobody is gonna say that to you, even though you're meant, like, you might think that, oh, well, it just wasn't fast enough. Stop that talk to yourself. You hear me? If I had a free hand, I'd point my finger at the camera.
Here you go. Be proud of what you do. I know not every race is going to be a good race, but a race is still a race, and the distance is still the same.
And if coronavirus has taught us anything, races are something to be cherished, because you never know when you're going to have time that you can't do a race.
Just saying. And you know what? This brings us to our last tip. Do not forget that you're doing this to have fun. That's the whole point of doing it. I personally love every race that I do. Yes, I struggle sometimes, but there's more great times than there are bad. And I know training sometimes can bog you down or lift you up.
You have good runs, yes. You have real bad ones, and you have mediocre ones where it's just like, okay, I did it.
Yeah.
You can't be hard on yourself, and you just gotta have fun.
Yeah.
And you still get the bling bling.
You love doing it, you're doing it for yourself, love what you're doing. You can do anything, and I mean literally anything that you set your mind to. And you know what? We are so proud of you. And if you, I'm getting all teary-eyed, but...
And like my shirt says, it's kind of fun to do the impossible.
Yeah. I think just saying one word that has taught me a lot of things, that if you're nervous to sign up for a race, you're nervous that, oh my gosh, it's 13.1 miles or it's 26.2 miles. You know, one year I taught myself this word and I will never forget it. It is yes. That word has changed my life in so many different ways. Not just for running, but for other things too.
Was that your word of the year this year?
Last year.
Last year.
Say yes to doing it because you never know what you can do unless you do it.
And trust your training.
Yeah.
If you put in the work, then your body will know what it's doing and you'll be able to finish.
And you know what? Have someone that's there for you. That's your partner in crime, because it's always fun when you do it with somebody.
Yes.
Well, you guys, we really, really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys learned something. And if you haven't learned something, just to hear it again, I guess. But these are from our experiences that we've had with races, and we want to share those experiences with you. So,
if you liked our video, make sure you give it the thumbs up sign.
and go ahead and comment down below. We would love to hear your experiences, or if you have any tips that you want to add to as well.
And we'll see you next time.
All right.